Hey you guys, welcome to Casual Corner Chat. Today you have Luke.
Hey, my name's Jenny.
Hi, I'm Sam.
I'm Vu.
And today we'll be talking about trauma. All right, you guys. So, I know it's a rough subject.
Damn, bro.
You're way too happy.
Wait, give me
I'm
a
sorry.
chance. Give me a chance. All right, so I wanted to ask you guys, how do you guys feel about trauma dumping? You guys know what that is first?
No, I don't know what that
Define
is.
it for the audience.
Yeah.
I think.
All right, so trauma dumping occurs when an individual shares their traumatic experiences with a recipient's consent, without the recipient's consent, often at inappropriate times or places.
Different from what I was thinking.
What were you thinking?
I thought trauma dumping was in like the situation where you just got to know someone and then you just started talking about things that you wouldn't usually just tell someone that you've just met.
Oh yeah, I guess that
I think that falls under that definition.
Yeah, right. What about you two? How do you guys feel about the name? Because I feel like
I thought it was just like ranting, but like ranting about your trauma and just like letting it all out. Like no,
right.
what's the word? Yeah.
I mean, everyone should be allowed the space to talk about their traumas and explore them in a way that is healthy.
Yeah.
The definition of it being at an inappropriate time, I guess, also makes sense. Because
Yeah.
you should do this with, you don't have to do it with a professional, but you can do it with friends and whatnot, but you should do it with the right audience or someone who is not held captive by you dumping your emotional baggage onto them.
Do you think it's healthy to trauma dump? In that sense as well.
To an extent.
To the correct audience?
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. Are you guys victims of trauma dumping or have you ever trauma dumped before?
I'm Viet, so yes. To both. Like,
What does that mean?
I agree to that.
yeah. We're damaged peoples and we damage people. So, that it runs in the bloodline.
So it offsets,
Quite
right?
frankly.
It offsets.
I mean, no, there's a net negative in the world, but it's as long as you work through it, it's okay.
Yeah.
But as a cultural thing, I think we're pretty damaged peoples. And part of the problem is not talking about them either. So you get people of two different ends of the spectrum where they say nothing and just feel it and just be sad and angry. And then you have people who feel it all the time, express it all the time, but do nothing to sort of fix it too. And cycles continue. But that's my experience.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
Yeah. What about you two? As girls. Yeah.
I don't think being a girl really
No, I'm just like
makes a difference, but I think
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think it's a gender thing.
I think it has happened here exactly. Probably one of those late night
In this house.
definitely. All those late night parties.
Yeah.
It definitely has happened where like a few people just sit in a corner, just start talking.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's at an inappropriate time.
So it's not to that definition.
Yeah. I think it just happens because it's like it's late night and then everyone is a little bit drunk, a little bit tipsy, and then just starts talking about.
Because there's a difference between a D&M and like trauma dumping, right?
guess.
Like that's,
But I guess
Yeah,
is it also
probably
different?
like just a D&M in your,
Yeah.
in your
Okay.
situation.
Then trauma dumping.
But I guess it's also different because in that sense, we're under the influence of alcohol, right? But in the case where, let's say, there's nothing influencing you, like it's just straight out, this person starts dumping on me their trauma just because, it's a hard day or something.
Okay.
It's like thing. Yeah. Honestly, though, my pet peeve is people who are serial trauma dumpers. And it's like to multiple people. Like, have you guys experienced that? Like, it would be like if I started trauma dumping to Jenny, and then next week or next day, I started trauma dumping to Sam. Next week, it'll be Vu. Like,
And it's about the same thing?
it'll be about the same thing.
oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, then it's different, right? Then that's you, like, not fixing the issue that you're talking about, and you just kind of want the drama of it all, right? Like, that's kind of what that is.
Like you're still kind of hooked on it and like you just can't move on. So you
Yeah.
just keep talking about it but not really doing anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's unhealthy.
So I've looked online, and there's different types of trauma. So this is, I know we're going a little off topic, but what do you think the different types of trauma is? Just in general.
Emotional.
Yeah,
Emotional.
physical trauma. Like, is that?
We're getting quizzed at school.
Examples. Give me examples of like different kind of trauma. I'll explain why
Okay.
I'm going off like this. But yeah.
Like heartbreak trauma? Like, is that an example?
Yeah. So
No?
first I'll name the
Doesn't sound
I'll name the
convinced.
two types, the two main types that it's apparently categorized in, and then I want you guys to think of examples for each. So there's two types of trauma. It's either type 1, which is acute trauma, which
This is very scientific. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is when it's in one instance, it's very post-traumatic. And then there's type 2 trauma, also known as complex trauma, which refers to a trauma that may involve childhood experiences or traumatic experiences during early development.
Okay.
I see. Okay.
So-
okay.
Don't worry, we'll get to the big point that I'm trying to get. But what do you guys think of examples of each? Because I feel like everyone has different definitions of trauma, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think all of our definitions were like physical, emotional, that kind of trauma. Whereas like we
Right.
didn't really delve down and we're categorizing it into those two.
Yeah. Yeah. But yes.
Yeah, we're talking like short-term and long-term impacts.
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
acute trauma
Yeah.
being like someone punching you in the face.
Yeah.
Versus, like someone doing something inappropriate to you as a kid and then you can't do something as a result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So
Wow.
we'll come back to this in a bit, but I wanted to ask, because I started asking people at work, do you think trauma is healthy for the person? I honestly think it is.
I think so too. I think it builds character.
Yes. Like, go first.
No, like I've been talking, so go, feel free.
Sam? I'll let you guys
Yeah, okay.
yes or no, and then we'll
Yeah.
we'll delve into why we think this and that.
I would say yes.
Yes?
Like, yes,
Yes?
it's necessary.
What are your reasons?
Trauma as like the broad category of difficulties that you face in life and that you need to overcome, then like, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
that's just
But
broadly
that's
speaking
just,
what it
that's
is.
just life though, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An average person's life, I guess.
Are you speaking like specifically bad things happening or just like the broad term of people go through traumas
Yeah,
and it
just-
makes them who they are? Type
Yeah,
thing?
I think honestly, I know it's weird saying, but it's a necessity for life because it's like evolution, like survival of the fittest. Although it's hard to say, but it's like, yes, sometimes people don't make through the trauma and it has a negative impact on my life. But I say that trauma, it's a very defining moment, right? Like to this day, you gotta, I don't know about you guys, but I've had trauma in the past and I've somewhat unlearned it and overcome it and I feel better for it, right?
Congrats.
I wouldn't
Yeah, that's true.
regret it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it also sucks to say for those who have been like domestic abuse, and all those different
Yeah.
pieces. I don't want to name because
Yeah,
just in
yeah,
case
yeah,
we
yeah.
get like, flagged and all that. But like, it's kind of sucks for them to say it's like, oh, what does that mean? It meant to happen to me. Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's tough to say to someone, or if someone lost a leg, it's like, oh, is this supposed to happen? Do you think this was necessary to happen to make me stronger? Does that make
Fair
sense?
enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
As
Understand
much
that.
as we wish, not wish, but we feel like trauma is good, there are others that will say indifferent. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why
Yeah,
I
you're
said
right.
that's why I said yes, like hesitantly, because obviously there's different degrees of trauma, and there's trauma that you can obviously grow from and learn from and become a better person and challenge yourself. But then there's obviously trauma that will affect you. Pardon me, will affect you like long term, and that may not be a good thing for some people, to a degree.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, what are the negative effects of trauma that you have seen? Because obviously there's people that have like overcome it, but what's the downside of not overcoming it?
Like depression.
It's one.
Repeating cycles of abuse.
It's another. Jenny?
Self-harm.
Self-harm, right? So all of this altogether, that's the downside. I think also another one would be people who use this as an edge. Like this goes into like trauma dumping when they use it to either seek attention or like fill a void, or let's say, what's another one? Oh, I had it the other day, but victimizing themselves, right? And they use it to get what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're all coughing now, but yes. Do you guys want to add on before I move on to the next point?
What's your overarching like thing here? What are you directing us towards? I feel like that might help the conversation.
Just the importance of trauma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what are your current thoughts right now?
I feel like trauma isn't a thing that, like, if you have had trauma and gotten over it, then good for you. But even if you do have trauma that you haven't gotten over yet, or something that still affects you day to day, it doesn't make you any less, you know? Like, it doesn't mean you're worse off than the person who has had something bad happen to them and then not anymore. You know, it ebbs and it flows. And I feel like someone who might say that they have gotten over a specific trauma might one day find out that they actually aren't, just because they've triggered in a different way or in a different situation. So, I don't know, I feel weird categorizing it in very broad strokes and like narrow buckets.
It's quite complicated, right? Like there's there's a lot of
It is quite
factors.
complicated.
Because
Yeah.
if you're talking about long-term trauma, then like that's, you know, that you don't identify the effects of it until like ages later. You know, yeah, I have examples, like personal examples of that. But I guess let's continue this conversation before, you know, that happens.
Right. Did you two want to add anything on?
Well, I think everyone has trauma, right? Regardless of, oh, you can't compare everyone's trauma because
Yeah.
everyone's trauma is significant to them,
Yeah.
to themselves, right? So it is something that everyone experiences and everyone goes through.
Right.
Trauma bonding is also something that I kind of want to talk
what's
about. I'll bring it up after we finish up
I
this
know
point.
what that is. I didn't know what dumping was, but yes, I know
Yeah,
what
yeah.
that is.
Trauma bonding, is that the same thing
Trauma
as
bonding.
Bonding.
Yeah, bonding,
Yeah.
bonding. Yeah.
is that the same thing as the whole
Yeah.
my view on the whole bear in the woods, a bear man in the woods thing?
No.
Yeah.
No. No.
Okay.
No.
No, I don't think so.
Wait,
different.
Is it? Okay.
Little
No,
different.
a little bit different.
We'll expand on that. It's okay.
But yeah, my overarching point of this entire episode was the quote. I don't know who said it exactly because it's always changed throughout the years, but you unlearn your trauma in your late 20s and you start living life in your 30s. Do you guys agree with that?
Well, we can't say that really because we're not 30 yet, right? But but yes, we are getting there.
Yeah.
I would say so.
I mean, broadly speaking, your 20s are the time when you start like figuring your out. Right?
Yeah, making mistakes and
Yeah, and
all
learning
of
from
that.
them and changing
Yeah,
from them.
correct.
And, you know, envisioning yourself like as a person that you want to be and working towards that. Whereas, you know, I feel like adolescence and young adulthood is just doing random stuff, getting up to trouble, and just kind of like dealing with the consequences if they come. Whereas now it's like, let's build towards something.
All right.
Yeah.
What about you two?
I just blanked. Sorry.
I can go first. That's
Yeah,
fine.
sorry, I just blanked.
I think in terms of like relationship trauma, that's going well for me. I think like looking at past relationships versus now, I do feel like my fears and worries have gone away. And that really is
for you.
dependent
That's
on
nice.
like the partner that I have, right? But I do feel like family trauma is still there because I do still live at home. And I don't get along with my parents, so that's something that I need to
Fair enough.
fix. But I do feel like in order to fix that, I need to move away from home.
That's true.
Naturally, that makes sense
Yeah.
to be out of that space.
Yeah, exactly.
Not-
So it's something I need to work on. I don't know.
I
Probably
can
right in the
I can
30s.
agree with that being the thing.
Yeah.
It's a catalyst for you giving yourself time to reevaluate your relationship with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And-
time away just being
Yeah.
time
yeah.
halfway from it.
And the
thing.
space
Yeah.
be helpful. Yeah. So
And what about you, Sam? Do you think you're unlearning your trauma at this point?
I would say yes. In terms of family, like I'm lucky that I've got a good relationship with my family. But it did take us time to get to this point. There was a lot of struggles and a lot of like, I guess, fights and disagreements.
Actually,
early
before
on.
you continue on, sorry,
Yes.
I gotta ask because remember, don't remember. What is your background?
I'm
Not saying it's a factor, but like Viets have a
yeah. I'm Malaysian Chinese.
Malaysian Chinese.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Continue on.
No, that's fine.
maybe we should. I'm Chinese too. Just so that everyone knows. We should say so.
That's
Rue's
true.
Viet and
I'm
Luke is
Viet as
also
well,
Viet.
yeah.
So
Okay.
Yes. No, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, so I think growing up, like, I definitely had disagreements with like, specifically one parent. I was lucky that the other parent took my side and was a bit more understanding. So I think over the years, I've definitely come to, I don't think really move on from it, but I kind of just like dealt with it and like understood that this is how my parents are going to be like, and kind of just take that and then work around that. Because I don't think, like, with my parents obviously coming from like another country and migrating here, there was obviously a lot of struggles, and they obviously have like their own way of like growing up and their own kind of like culture and values and stuff like that. So that's never going to change. So I think it's more just me kind of just opening them up to the world that we live in Australia, for example, and kind of just showing them that there's another side to the story as well, like just so that they can understand my viewpoint. Because before it was more like I would just be fighting against them and not really showcase like what the other side was.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like fighting like a brick wall kind of
Right.
thing. Like there was no input really.
you're definitely more mature than I am because I still fight back.
Yeah, well, I learned the hard way that that's not.
And I understand.
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from. It is like talking to a brick wall where like
Yeah.
it's yeah. And you're definitely more mature than I am.
Okay, now I have a question for Sam. I know she's the eldest
Yes.
person. That's the kid in the family.
gosh.
Sorry, well,
That took a while.
child in the family.
I understand. Yes. I am the
Offspring,
eldest.
the eldest
Yes.
offspring.
Am I the only one?
No, you're the eldest.
No, as in here.
Of
Am I
here.
the only one?
Yes.
Because I know you're.
Yes.
Oh.
Luke and I are both the youngest.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Jenny's an only child.
Oh, I see.
So my question
Okay.
is like that, I guess, working towards reconciliation between you and your parents.
Yeah.
Like, is that a thing that was driven mostly by you because you were the eldest? Or did they meet you halfway?
That's a good point.
I think it's the fact it's my personality and also that I'm the oldest. And also because my younger sibling isn't like willing to fight and like, I guess, bring up her opinion as much as I was
Yeah.
or am. So I think it's like a combination. But I think it was definitely more one-sided, like me.
Mostly you
taking
think,
that step
Okay.
forward.
What's the
Yeah.
age gap between you and your sister?
6 years.
6 years. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's a baby.
Same with me and my sister.
Yeah.
But what about you and your brother?
5 years.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so
Okay.
similar.
Yeah,
Wow.
interesting.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that is quite
And
interesting.
Thinking about it now, my brother took like the, I don't want to
Brunt of
say
it?
brunt of it. Yeah.
Yeah, with the brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it's like that. Like as you were saying, like your sister didn't want to fight. I'm like,
Yeah.
I didn't fight back then. I just
Yeah.
accepted it all.
Yeah.
And it's-
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
That's true.
Like I asked you that question because I think like with in regards to family trauma and trying to repair that, I
Yeah.
think I made the mistake of expecting my parents to meet me halfway,
Yeah.
or at least to halfway in sort of like the arena in which I set up for them, which in retrospect is a little bit unfair, and also like expecting other people to reach an emotional point that they are not able to is also unfair. And
Like that expectation.
yeah.
Wait,
Like
but is it an unfair expectation for them to meet you halfway?
no.
I just feel like with Asian culture, they're really set
is
in
the
their
thing.
ways, especially in their 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
That's the
and
thing.
Immigrant parents, they're very set in their ways. So it's
Yeah.
and us growing up in this open Australian culture.
Yeah.
There's a culture clash.
Yeah.
So it is very difficult. I guess we can all trauma
Yeah.
bond on that.
Yes,
that's
yes.
that's its whole other thing.
It's
and I'm
here,
very
it's
ready
here.
to talk about
I
that.
think growing up for me,
Yeah.
it's like what do you call it? Developed an unhealthy reasoning. It's like, oh, they are immigrants. They came here by like boat and whatever. And it's like, how do I ever compete with that rationality, right?
Yeah.
And like, yes, they are providing, but yes, they're starting with nothing. It's like, damn, right?
For days.
You have your own struggles. Like,
Yeah.
sure, there's struggles
Yeah.
where like where that kind of thing, but like you have your own.
It's true.
It is different nowadays, and
Yeah.
probably a little bit more,
Exactly.
let's say, cushy compared to what they had to go through. But
Yeah.
it's not any less significant. Really.
Yeah.
That your hardships aren't any less. Like
Yeah.
I'm in complete
Yeah.
agreement with you.
Yeah.
Your hardships aren't any less, but at the same time, you're sitting there complaining about I don't know your job, right? Whereas they are literal refugees, right? They came here with nothing,
Yeah.
clothes on
Yeah.
their backs, couldn't speak the language, just for blind hope that like things are going to work out for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they have
like,
a better life here.
insane.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah,
did that at the
that's
age
true.
of what, 22?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, right?
My ass is like 28 right now. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm paying good money to go to a different country to go experience like
Travel.
all
Yeah.
this like unsafe cool shit,
Yeah.
Whereas all they wanted their whole life is for me to be safe in one country, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm bored in Australia. This place is too safe. I hate it here, so I'm gonna go out and explore the world. And they're just like we were on a boat for months, like and
Yeah.
ate random shit, like just so you can be here and complain about it, So it's
Yeah.
you spend your whole life walking a particular line of feeling ungrateful for their sacrifice that they are not willing to let you forget.
Yeah.
And it is a very easy emotional crutch for them to get you to do whatever they want you to do by saying, oh, I came here for you guys and you can't do X, Y, Z for me, and then also feeling like you're also having to realize that your feelings are also valid and what you want and your desires in the culture that they brought you up in
Yeah.
as a result of their decisions is also a valid thing.
Right.
It is a very specific issue that arises with the children of immigrants.
Yeah.
The
Is it called
amount-
second generation or first generation? I always get
I
confused.
get a little bit confused too.
Are we first generation?
We're
Because-
first
We're
generation.
first gen
We're-
kids.
Oh,
right?
first
But
gen
like,
kids.
do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if first generation refers to like the first generation of people coming here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I never
Oh,
know
okay.
that.
Okay. Yeah. That
But
makes
yeah,
sense.
I get what you-
Yes.
Yeah. But the amount of people that I've had this conversation with is, and the fact that we share this collective cultural sadness
Yeah.
is pretty insane.
Yeah.
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 And is, I think, a topic for an episode all by itself, which
Yeah.
I'm happy to lead. But it is a thing.
Yeah.
But it is too early in its inception, I think, for it to be widely recognized. And also, it's very specific to Australia because we are very close to Vietnam and China and the people that fled because of the various wars and
Oh,
hardships
makes
over there.
sense. Right.
Like we're
Wait,
very
country.
multicultural,
You
right?
don't think people in America have that kind of issue?
I think
Or Canada?
I think they do, but it's then molded. It differentiates itself quite sharply once the kids start growing up in the American culture.
Yeah.
So how they assimilated to American culture is like a completely different thing.
Yeah.
Especially in regards to like having hip hop culture and stuff like that.
Yeah,
over
exactly.
there as a way in.
Way.
Okay.
What? How did your parents come here?
They're refugees.
Like, same way as his?
Pretty. I don't know the full backstory. I think I asked you once, but I don't know. I
okay.
can't remember the full
Yeah.
backstory.
Yeah. My parents weren't.
Yeah.
They flew,
Flew
here
here,
because
yes.
Yeah.
they knew that Australia was on the uprise.
Yeah.
And that's why they came here. It wasn't a refugee situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, likewise.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could never imagine how your parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
honestly, we can't
100%.
either, right? And part of it is trying to make them proud, but also like having to learn that we need to eventually make them proud on our own definitions and not theirs. It's a very difficult
like a fine
thing.
line, I think.
Yeah.
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 You learn that as you obviously grow.
Anyways, that's a bit of a tangent, but yeah, it's a thing that happens, especially with people our age. And now that we're growing up and having families of our own, some people are making certain decisions about how to raise their kids.
Exactly. And this
pretty
is
interesting.
my next question.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So we all agree that traumatic experiences, trauma builds character, right?
Yeah.
Would you pass on any of your trauma to your kids?
Not intentionally.
Yeah, what question is that?
Yeah, I agree. Not intentionally.
Not intentionally.
But I was like thinking of like, what? Like just no.
Oh, as in, do you mean like stories?
no,
No?
just any kind of trauma. Literally any kind of trauma. Like
What?
literally.
Well,
Because-
like, it's not something that you can help if, right?
True, but I mean, like, let's say not intentionally.
Sorry, that
I know it's a
question-
weird question, but let's say not intentionally. Like, what trauma? Because again, we all said we builds character and whatnot, and I think as well, like, just seeing social media, especially in the Western countries, people who don't have trauma end up trying to look for it, and they try to put titles to what they are missing in their life or what they feel kind of like some degree of oppression, and they label it as trauma, and they use it. I guess this is a bad way.
They kind of weaponize it a little bit.
Because like I don't know if you see
It's like spinning the story in
Yes.
a sense. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't.
It's like self-diagnosing yourself with like
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
autism or something to sort
Yeah.
of get attention.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Like,
is it kind of along those...
Like I've seen videos of like people getting arrested, and then it's like, oh, this is generational trauma. You're hurting me. Da da da. This. Da, da,
Oh,
this.
so they
It's
make
like-
it like a blown up thing.
Yeah, and they just use it as to get
Use
their
and
way.
abuse.
And that's just one example of like people who don't have a trauma, but as well as like experience is what makes the person, right? I've seen it go out like the good way and the positive way. Like my cousins, they're like how do I say it? Their parents, my uncle and auntie raised them really well, but they're like so clueless about the world and whatnot, and so become so naive. While trauma builds character, you know what is dangerous out there. You
Yeah.
know how
Like you're not
to take
closed
care of
off to the
yourself.
world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
that is important.
Well, I don't think you necessarily need trauma to know what's dangerous in
True.
the world.
Yeah. Like I guess there are lessons like teachers can teach and all that to like be careful, but I feel
I think trauma builds. You don't trust people anymore.
Yeah, in a general sense, right?
in
a general
like,
sense, yeah.
yeah,
You're a bit
that's
more
true,
like
actually.
cautious.
Yeah.
A little bit more cautious.
yeah.
But what is an example of generational trauma? Just I'm going a blank, so I can't really.
So I actually had to search this up because this
Yeah,
came
okay.
up so many times. So
Yeah.
pretty much it would be like your grandma got home invasion, right? And she's afraid to go out. And then she teaches your mum about the horrors out of the world, which causes your mum to be scared of going out. And then she does it to you and so forth. Another way is like African Americans of cops, right? Being scared of cops and whatnot. That's like generational
Valid.
trauma.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
war is another one, especially
I
like in the Middle
see.
Eastern countries. It's just a scared and so forth, and it carries on and so forth.
Yeah, so like a specific trauma that affects like numerous generations.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. So that's just generational
Fair.
trauma. But yeah, people use it in a bad way. They're like, oh, even though it doesn't affect them, they use it as a card to get out of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
There's a called bad people.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yes, back to the original question. What kind of trauma would you pass on to your kids?
If I had to choose, like
Maybe not your own, but like a
unintentionally,
type
like, what do you
of
think?
trauma. Would you like me to give you lists of examples and then you guys can pick from it?
Sure.
I know you guys are sorry, but like, all right. So I'm guessing we're talking about complex trauma because the
Yeah.
ones that happen once, But childhood abuse, domestic violence, neglect, attachment, bullying, religious trauma, strict upbringing, and I think it's called parentalification.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Parentification.
parentification.
What is that?
Please
Sorry.
explain.
Yeah,
So
what
pretty
is
much
that?
a kid has to become a parent at a young age.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And like learn to
Oh.
take care of themselves.
Yeah,
So
well,
let's
let's
say-
take care of themselves or the younger siblings.
yeah.
It's typically
Oh,
a
okay.
older sibling sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or if the parents are negligent and not present, then they have to like start being the parent to their parents.
Okay.
Yes. What would you pass on?
If I had to choose, like, are you making me choose out of this
Yes, I'm
laundry
making
list
you
of terrible
choose.
things, bro?
Yes.
Wait, I think I might have one. I think maybe like not showing enough love to my child.
Oh my god! Sorry.
Wow. Sorry. No, I was
think,
just
like,
thinking about
physically-
something so different. Oh, no, I was thinking about something very different.
But I think
Yeah.
physically that's something that I'm afraid that I might unintentionally
okay.
do.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
Wow, that is.
Actually, I agree with that. Like,
Because
I
like
think that's
I know
pretty cool.
I can't remember the last time I hugged my mum. I can't remember the last time I like
it's
talked
true.
about my feelings with her.
I don't know about your Viet
I-
household, but like love is not a word in our
It's not like
bro.
it's not like I will intentionally not talk about these things with my child. I will try and do as much as I can. I just
You haven't been shown it.
yeah, and like obviously I don't feel like I neglect my partner in any sense of that kind of way either. But I'm just worried that could happen. You know.
Yeah, it's natural.
That's right.
Yeah, that's fair.
The thing is, something else. I let you guys pick an answer, but I'll go to my next point.
Wait, can I go back to
Yeah, go ahead.
what Jenny said though? Like when in terms of like affection towards your parents, I know like your parents might not provide that for you, but are you like the bigger person ever and try to like, because for me like it's been a slow progress. Like
Not really.
parents would never like, hug or say I love you. And the first few times where they did, I was like shocked. I was like, who are you kind of thing. But it all started, like baby steps, right? Like you kind of reaching out, it hurts at the beginning where like you obviously don't get it reciprocated, but I'm just curious to know if you
Take the initiative.
take initiative. Yeah. It's always the hardest step to us as well.
Yeah. And I think at this stage, my relationship with my mum is like, it's hard to even have a casual chat with her. So I can't see myself even taking baby steps right now.
Yeah.
With my dad, it's a little bit better because
Yeah.
all my parents are divorced.
Okay.
And I live with my mum. So with my dad, it's a little bit better. I can have casual chats with him.
Yeah.
Is it because of this?
But
The
Distance?
I think
Yeah.
it's the space.
Yeah.
The space really helps. And I do see him once a month, and it's not like we hug or anything, but it's like casual laughing, those kinds of conversations, which
That's
is good.
good.
Yeah. And I can see me being more affectionate towards my dad.
Yeah.
But yeah, towards my mum, not so much right now.
Yeah.
No, fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I
just
think- oh, no, you
to
go.
be the devil's advocate to that, like I have tried, and the reason why I said that I shouldn't expect them to meet me at the point where I think they should be at is like I tried taking the initiative with my mum, and it worked basically. So we have a very good relationship now. Where we can sit around, chat, and just like have coffee, and like she would legitimately talk about her love life and stuff with me, like growing up. It was quite interesting.
Okay. It's like growing up, I
good.
was like, all right now. I was
Yeah.
like,
You know,
it's like, whoa. Like, it's like me and your dad just doing something.
like the unabridged stories of like
right.
you know like what marriage is like
Yeah.
in reality and all that sort of stuff.
that's
Like just
good.
yeah,
That is
it's quite
good.
it's really nice, and there's a lot of wisdom that is shared there. Both ways, actually, which is pretty cool. Which is what made me think that I could brute force the same thing with my dad. But my dad is an Asian dad and someone who does Asian dads, broadly speaking, emotionally very obtuse. not super present for most of my childhood, and hence doesn't know me in that way.
No.
Yeah.
I can testify.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And I guess in their older ages, don't want to invest their time into emotionally connecting with their family, I guess. It comes from I spent the last 40 years of my life working every day to put food on the table, to make sure the bills are paid. And then now that you kids are like flown the nest, the house is paid off, I'm going to relax and do me. And it comes off as it's a fair thing, like you worked your whole life, now you get to relax. But it comes off in a very arrogant sort of way of like, now because I don't have to care about you, I am not going to care about you.
Yeah.
And it's very emotionally distant. And
I have a very different experience, but we'll
we
talk about
have very different experiences. But I have tried with my dad multiple times, and sometimes when I think I've gotten somewhere, like he would do something that like just removes all that altogether. And adding to the complex pile of this is just that you also need to know where your parents' limits are as well.
Oh,
Obviously,
100%.
sometimes that would surprise you.
Yeah.
But it's important to also realize that you shouldn't strive for something that is completely out of your own imagination and not based in reality. I think that's one of the things.
But you'd only know until you try, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I think
Exactly.
that's the key part I'm trying to say is like,
Yeah.
you have to try
Yeah,
first
absolutely.
before you can make a judgment on whether it's
Yeah.
going to work or not.
Sometimes it works, it
Yeah.
feels nice. Sometimes
Yeah.
it doesn't, and it
Yeah.
sucks ass, but you just got to live with that.
100%.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Sam?
Well, jumping on that, I think when it comes to like Asian dads and sons, I think there's a bit more of a like an ego / like man of the house kind of vibe. I don't know. Whereas, because with my dad, like my dad's very open. He's very understanding. Like he's always he's a chatter. He always talks about his life experiences, and he's very open about that.
My dad's like that too, actually.
Yeah, which is good. And I think that has given me experience and like understanding about the world. But it also has helped the relationship a lot in my family. So yeah.
Are you saying that your
different.
mum is the one that's a little bit more difficult?
Yes. Hi, Mum. Yeah. But I think we clash because we're both quite similar personality, where we both will fight to get and like to make our point. So I think that's why we do clash. But we have developed a better relationship over the years, thankfully. But it did take, some time to get there, and we had to have conversations and, I cried many times and, stuff like that. But
I hope to get where you are now.
Yeah.
Soon.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But I think, you just have to try. I think that's the hard part, especially as we get older as well. And like, we are going to, move out eventually and stuff like that. I think I'd want to build that relationship before I leave. But I know that it does, like some people do form better relationships when they do move out of home, aka like Vu, for example, like he's experienced that. So I think you just have to find, your middle ground, I guess, to see what works for you. Yeah.
What about you, Luke?
Yeah,
Very
so you're a bit
quiet.
quiet over there.
Well, what question is aimed at me right now?
What was the question that Luke actually... I don't know how he worded it. How did he word it? He worded it like trauma that you would pass on to your kids.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even answer that, but you
but
you
it was
go
a bit of a
first.
tangent to then like just
Yeah.
parental trauma. Like how does that dynamic work in your house, right? Like how do you sorry. Let me frame the question.
Yeah.
We were speaking about our relationship with our parents, and I guess like repairing that. How would you frame your relationship with them before and after, and if you've made any steps towards like
Good
fixing
question.
Yes.
In terms of unlearning trauma in the sense, right? Especially with parents. Honestly, I don't think there's any progress at all. I think like truth be
On
told,
fixing your trauma?
yeah, fixing on trauma with parents. I
Okay.
think it's kind of set in stone
Oh wow.
in a way because
Is that your mindset set in stone?
I think so. Yes, because what do you call it? Growing up, they were pretty somewhat supportive, but then there were at times at like crucial moments, it was like 100% in the opposite direction, and I think they just stuck it in my mind and then just morphed the image of them, and I just like how I says like comparing my pain to their pain is completely like unfathomable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just set that, and then I think I started building my identity outside of this household, and then they don't see that, and they always question this and that. And then when I do bring a little bit from outside to inside, it's sometimes, a majority of the time it's good, but then again, they are 100%.
Like you don't feel accepted.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Yeah, so I just use that.
In what situations when
Yeah,
you
can you
bring
speak
your
specifically?
personality from outside to inside, are they seeing?
Oh, like I guess like I invite you guys over and all that. They see that fun part, right? The happiness side. But there was a point where our family was going through a difficult time, and I had to be the strong one for a while. But the second I brought like my sadness into the household, I was told, and I quote, "Whatever you have, leave it outside. Do not bring it into the household." Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Wow,
difficult.
that is
Yeah.
hard.
And this was not even in childhood. This is like
Like
my
adulthood?
20s.
Yeah.
My early
Okay.
20s.
And that's so to reaffirm a childhood thing.
Yeah,
is that- is
exactly.
that-
That's
yeah,
just
okay.
to reaffirm, like, okay, that's it, done.
Yeah.
And that's
Sorry
hard.
you went through that, man.
Yeah, that's hard
Yeah.
because like
Yeah.
home should be like a safe space, right?
Oh,
Maybe not.
I have
Yeah,
words.
yeah.
Just wanted
Well-
to say for our listeners, viewers, this is why Asian girls and guys are toxic, all right? Like, be prepared if you're going to date them.
hurt people. So, yeah. I'm very glad for you, Sam.
I know
No, it's hard.
He says
Made it
that
out
with
of
no
the
manners.
hood. No, it's I don't know. I feel like I give only so much to my parents and to my parents, like in terms of how I am as a person.
Okay.
Like I'm a very happy person, right? Overall. So I always show that side. So whenever I'm sad, they don't see that really. So I don't open up as much or as easily to them about my sadness. That's me just in general sometimes though. Like I don't really share my sadness to a lot of people. But
I can attest to that.
yeah, exactly. But
Blood from stone sometimes.
I don't know what to say to that. But I think, like for example, like my sister sees like my true self. Like she sees my ups and downs, so I'm able to have that relationship in my home with her. But yeah, with family, with parents, it's a bit different. So
So would you still define it as safe, even though you feel like you can't be sad
I would
with
still
them?
like if it really comes to it, I would definitely go to them.
Okay.
And I know I can go to them if I really need them. Yeah.
Right, okay.
But
But insofar
sometimes-
that you just haven't needed to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I kind of just I have my sister in that regard in my home that I can go to. So I don't feel like I need to go to them unless it's like really dire.
Yeah.
Do you feel like
Yeah.
you can share your traumas with your parents?
Yeah,
with
I
your
can.
sister?
Sorry?
Like, do you think you can discuss the trauma that you have with your parents with your sister? Like, do you think she feels the same way?
No. Actually, as she's getting older, yes, I feel like she's picking it up a little bit more. Like why I fought so hard for us, like back, because I think back in the days, I was not just fighting for myself. I was fighting for her and me
Fair enough, yeah.
to have a better, like, I guess, life or a better, like, relationship with my family. Yeah.
That's
And
the job of the older sibling.
correct.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
when she was younger and I was fighting for it, she didn't understand at all why I was doing that. Like she was like Switzerland. She was not saying anything. She didn't want to be involved. But now she's the one who's like fighting back.
Okay.
And get like as she gets older, I'm like, yeah, see now you know what I mean. You know?
What about you guys? being the younger siblings?
You first.
Wow, this is interesting. I have an older sister, also 6 years difference.
Yeah.
She's older than me. I can, attest to your sister's perspective of
Yeah.
I kind of sat on the sidelines and watched my sister fight my parents to
Yeah.
do a lot of things. At the time, I didn't realize that it was for the both of us. I was too young to conceptualize it, but I guess the general sense of like her fighting to be able to go out with her friends and stuff like that, like would one day I would reap those benefits.
100%. Yeah.
But wouldn't that be also because it's your sister and then you're a guy?
Oh, that's also another thing too.
I'm going to comment on that too.
Okay.
So
100%.
eldest daughter, she had a lot more restrictions than I did. So even if we were both the same sex, like by virtue of her being the first child, she would always have had more restrictions than me. But because I am also a guy, and in Asian culture, guys just, have more freedoms.
Not just Asians, but yeah, continue.
Yeah, just it's particularly pronounced. But so she saw the gap that existed between both me being a younger sibling and also me being the male sibling as well. And she found that to be quite unfair, and I don't put it against her. Like I understand that there was a clear difference of treatment between my parents and her and my parents and me when I grew up, as we were growing up. She also grew up in the 90s. Like, that was a weirder time than it was the 2000s. And technology boom, all that sort of stuff. So that divide, the 6 years that exist between us, like, just creates more of a divide. I think now I will stand up for my sister a lot more in regards to my parents, especially as I've sort of grown into myself and, seen my sister as more of a human being than just my sister.
Yeah.
We are quite different people, and at the end of the day, we came from the same house, and I feel like our experiences of that house are quite different. I spent a long time trying to relate to my sister in terms of like the trauma that I think that we would have both experienced having the same parents, but that just didn't exist.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see what your sister like feels about
I'm also curious too.
Yeah.
I really want to know. I haven't had that conversation with her, but I've
had that with my sister, and it's not the same at all.
Yeah.
And that's also another thing of like expecting someone to be on a similar wavelength as you, but it's not in their capacity to, and it's not their fault. That's kind of fine.
Yeah.
It's like finding those limits, right? But yeah, like we, I guess, didn't have a great relationship growing up, and now it's sort of better. But we're not as close as I want us to be.
Because 6 years is a long time. That's a different life stages, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's very true.
So, but I think now that as we age, that sort of like gap feels less big now. Like she's in her 30s, I'm entering my 30s. So largely speaking, that feels the same as opposed to her being in her like late 20s and my being in my early 20s. Like that feels very different.
Yeah.
So the cavernous sort of gap between that feels much smaller as you grow older. But that's my experience. Like, what's your experience like, Luke?
For me, so
you and your brother specifically.
Sorry?
You and your brother specifically, because even though I've known you for a long time, I don't have a lot of information on this.
Okay.
No, fair enough.
Yeah.
But for me, with the same thing with you and your sister Sam.
Yeah.
The whole now your young sister started to fight back.
Yeah.
I'm not fighting back. I just admitted defeat at that point, right? And with the way how my brother and I grew up, like your sister, like he fought against my parents a lot. I remember a big fight that my parents and he had when he was in high school was just over a haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like he got a fade and then they blew up.
Wow.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. And I even remember him he's like, he's like, are you gonna say anything? And I'm like, I don't. Yeah. I didn't want to be a part of it.
You're like squirming.
I don't want to be perceived.
Yeah, like I till this day I still hate confrontation.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So, and
That's one thing.
Yeah,
So sorry to interrupt, but if your parents were to say something that you truly disagree with, you would just let them. You wouldn't just not fight back. Like you wouldn't disagree with their opinion. You would just be like,
yeah, because I think at a very young age, they either implemented or like taught me or reinforced whatever that be good, that's good, all right? Like just stay quiet, be good, that's good, that's it. Like it's very in the bound. It's like don't break any rules. You're fine if you don't break any rules. That's good.
but what? Okay, but the rules are made by them.
I know.
No?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the
okay.
thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like bringing on that point, I've seen like my uncles and aunties who have problems with their like issues with their first child. They talk to my parents, and I was there for the conversation. When it's like my mum would be like, or my mum and dad would be like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna happen. This is what you do," and then that's what happened. That's what I did, and it fixed. Like it's like it would be like my cousin had an argument with my parents, and it's like my mum was like, "Let him blow his steam," and then eventually he will figure out it's your way that he wants and all that. And I'm like, huh, interesting. And then it's like, and it's completely different with the second child of my cousin's family and all of that. She's like, I was like, my parents would be saying, do this, do that, and then your second child will fall in line. It's like, and that's what happened. And I don't know how to say it, but it's just like very.
It's like their way or the highway. Like
Yeah.
there's no other.
But is there
way.
an element of you thinking that your parents are actually right? Like there's proof that they are correct? Is that?
Oh, like I do have like disagreements. Sorry, how do I say this? I do disagree time to time, but it's just like it's how we all say it's like it becomes too hard to like talk them out of it. They're set in their own ways.
Yeah.
Right. Like, yeah, that's just it. Right. Like.
So you'd rather not have the fight?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and all that because I've seen the fights that like my brother had with them. Like there'll be days they wouldn't talk to each other back then and all that.
Yeah.
And so forth. And man, it's just like.
So those fights haven't been successful. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just like.
Okay.
It's like it's agree to disagree. Yeah, kind of situation, and they just accept both terms. And that's it. Like I don't agree with you, but you can do it.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
So are you telling me that you've had successful fights?
Honestly, yeah.
Damn.
I look a lot of.
I would say yeah too.
I quite frankly, like I think I also have my sister to thank for that too. They saw what it looked like when the fight ended, like on a note where, like Luke was talking about, where you can do it. Like if you do it, I can't stop you, but I'm going to disagree. And so when it ended up on that note, my sister would do the thing that she argued for, and it would end up in a bad way. And I think at some point they had some type of realization where they started thinking of their kids more as human beings instead of things to control.
So your parents grew.
Yeah, basically. And like I can relate to the cousin thing too, because one of my cousins was, the goody two-shoes that agreed with her parents, never argued back until one day she just like ran away from the house, never to come back. She like moved to a different country, ran away with a boyfriend, cut off contact,
real
all this
extreme
sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone was surprised, but also like it made sense because she was living her life under like lock and key essentially. And then I think at that point the parents like sort of sat down and had a conversation of like, we're doing something wrong, because if she was the rebellious one, then it would make sense that she ran away, right? Because she's a
Yeah.
bad child.
Yeah.
I don't know about Chinese parents, but Viet parents are very much of the fan of like, I did nothing wrong. The child is the bad one, and that's why.
Yeah,
Same.
because
They're
it's
bad.
it's like dishonor on their like
Yeah.
parental family record.
Yeah, exactly. So if they admit to fault, then like it means up. Whereas it's easy in that situation to then blame the bad kid for being naughty or like Western influences and shit, right? But because this was like the prime example golden child running away. They were just like, okay, so we messed up somewhere along the line. We need to change it. And I think from then on, the family members tend to be a little bit easier on the kids and like listen to the kids a little bit more. I mean, it went from a completely gate closed to like slightly ajar, but it was still more than what the older siblings got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll give credit to my mum, who like has worked a lot on herself and to change that part about her. You know, the sort of tiger mum and all that sort of. She sort of like let that go in a way that is like positive for herself and also the family.
Yeah. Of course.
Which is really good. But that's why we can have the relationship that we have, because I can't see myself being as open about myself to someone that doesn't reciprocate or is still trying to like make me be a certain thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. That's my thing.
Fair enough. And I guess back to my relationship with my brother, but with the whole me not confronting everything to my parents, and my brother had to fight and all that. I believe, he developed anger issues.
Okay.
And then he used that on me. He took his anger out on me.
Okay.
And as the person who doesn't
Respond to
I began to
confrontation.
resent him.
Oh,
And then there
That's
was
tough.
a point in that difficult time in my family where I did fight back and I just shut him out completely. Like I didn't talk to him for years. Yeah. And then just when he finally came back to Australia, I'm like, we just pretended like nothing happened.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's tough.
Yeah, that's just my relationship with my brother.
Fair. Now, would you want to have spoken about the things that have happened in those years? You know, like
His brother, you mean?
to his brother, to your brother. Do you like? Would you want to like sit
Have that
down and have a
conversation?
chat?
I think he wants to with me.
Oh, okay.
But for me, I think it's just, no, I'm good. Like,
Okay.
Okay. So
Now-
even though he extended his hand, you're not willing to come to the middle.
Too
Like you-
confrontational.
that, and it's just like, I don't know, I built such a...
You're okay to not talk about it now.
Yeah.
Or you
Like-
feel like you can't talk about it, like it's
Or
a
you don't wanna bring it
capability
up.
issue.
There's so many,
Bit of
so many
both.
questions.
There's so many factors.
Yeah,
in all
there's so
that.
many
It's a bit of
questions.
both. Like I've developed such an identity outside.
Yeah.
That these instances at home don't change anything out there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like
It's because
these
okay.
bad things. Yeah.
It's home. Home is not safe. Like that's
Yeah.
that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
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 Like that's why I moved out. Like I didn't feel safe in my own house anymore, and I couldn't be the person that I was outside of the walls of whatever walls I was living in. Was more comfortable with themselves than they were in that space.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so at that point, you sort of like develop weird and restrictive like personalities, right? That live outside of each other. Like when you walk into your parents' house, you're this one thing. But when you leave, you're another thing.
Yeah.
And so it's like a
like an on and
bifurcation
off.
of
Yeah.
like who you actually are. And then at a certain point, you're just like which part is one I identify with, you know?
And it
So
seems
I
that
know
Luke
what you're
wants to
saying.
identify with the personality outside of home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is fair.
Yeah. That's it. Anyways.
I
so
find that really interesting.
yeah.
Because, like, I feel like with my parents, like, they've mellowed out over the years. Yeah. So I think that's helped with my relationship with them. So,
Have they identified why? Have you identified why they've mellowed out? Like, is it because of those fights that you had? Or is it just like age? Or is it just, you know?
I don't think I've identified it. I've kind of just accepted it and been like, oh, that's great.
Yeah, you're not going
Like,
to question it.
No, I'm not
like,
going to question
thank God.
it. Like, what changed? I don't know, but it's great. I don't know. I feel like it's a combination of like both of my sister growing up. Like, we're no longer like kids anymore. Like, we have, we're earning our own money. Like we've got our own lives outside of home. That's shaped them. I think like when me and my sister either travel overseas, like I think the heart does grow fonder. So I think that's definitely helped. Like when I've traveled or when my sister's traveled, I think that definitely has helped.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe that is the answer.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So what about you, Jenny? Like,
Yeah.
I'm curious about your relationship with your parents. Has that like evolved over time, or has it sort of like been where it's at now for quite some time?
I think with my mum, it has been where it's at for quite some time. I think the decisions that she's made, I would personally think that they're bad decisions.
Okay.
Do you think
financial ones
a
or, like-
neutral person outside of like the situation would agree with you as well?
I think so.
Okay.
But I feel like she was trying to do her best for me.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, there weren't like educated decisions.
Okay.
So yeah, with my mum, we're both like shooting guns at each other, sort of type of thing. With my dad, it's cool.
Right.
But has it grown to where it is now?
Yeah.
Or has
So
it always
with my
been that?
dad, I feel like when I was, my parents haven't been together for a very long time, so I've never lived with my dad, and for very long periods of time, actually during like primary school and high school, I didn't get to see him a lot. So I did have like these questions in my head of like, oh, why can't my family be together? Like, why am I in this situation? Those kinds of questions, Mum. But and yeah, I did have disagreements with my dad in like high school and stuff. But I feel like, and even like early 20s, I sort of didn't want to spend time with him.
Okay.
Like he would set up dates to go lunch and I would dread going just because I thought it was like another chore that I had to do. But now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, I don't know how long my parents have, like that sort of thing. So I
Yeah.
might as well just like spend my time with them nicely.
Yeah. I mean, that's you putting in the effort, right?
Yeah.
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 I think that's a reality for us as well, that, our parents
Yeah.
are getting older. This is true.
Right. So back to the main question that we had. Did you want to pass any of this stuff to your kids?
I mean, the answer is no, man. Like, I mean,
Yeah, no.
like,
Because the issue is, there's been studies as well that people who go through this kind of trauma, when we teach our own kids, it becomes an overcorrection.
yeah. I know what this is.
I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
So even though like what we've been through that, we might end up being overbearing and so forth.
Okay.
Yes. And that's when their own rebellious kind of phase will kick in and all that.
Yeah.
As they grow along.
Like, I'm genuinely afraid that I will be too lax. Like, my parents were overbearing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like
So you go from like 100 to 0.
yeah, exactly. But like, I knew that like, I promised myself that when I got a tiny bit of freedom, I would like run it, right? Like, I would just like do wild shit.
Yeah.
Because like, I finally got away from like underneath their thumb. And I did. And I got up to a lot of unsafe things. And then thinking back, I was like, I can't imagine, I don't want my child to be under the same circumstances. So I want to be more relaxed and allow them to do more things. But then at the same time, is that just going to give them license to do like crazy shit? And then it's just like, yeah, my parents let me, so it's fine. But yeah.
I think it comes to communication
I mean,
a
of
little
course.
bit as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, I would want my kids to experience certain things, but I'd want to know about them, or at least be able to for them to confide in me and tell me about the experiences.
Yeah.
Whereas, like,
I did not have that.
Pardon?
I did not have that for my parents.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I would actively hide stuff,
Yeah,
like-
exactly. Like, I definitely, lied about things and stuff like that, like during uni and stuff like that. But I would hope that I could have that relationship where they'd be able to tell me some things or be able to come to me in times where it's like really necessary or like serious. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think sharing our experiences, like of how like my upbringing, for example, with my child, kind of gives them perspective as well. Like I'd want to give that to them as well. Like to just have an understanding that this is how I grew up. This is not how, or this certain things may be how, I want us to be like. or might be quite different, but I'd rather be open about that and have that communication to let them know, you know, it's not always so simple and easy. Like, I obviously definitely want it to be more comfortable and relaxed as well, but there obviously has to be like respect and obviously like, you know, rules in a household as well, like especially when you're growing up. So there are certain things that I would bring across. Yeah.
You, Jenny?
I just wasn't thinking. I do agree with Sam with like communicating with your child just so that they know how you grew up and how they will grow up is going to be different. So
Yeah.
I agree with that. That's pretty much.
So do we all want kids here?
Yes.
To a degree, yeah.
Okay. Just checking in.
Everyone
Just
had
checking
different
in.
answers. That was really
Yeah, just
interesting. I didn't
checking in,
expect that.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
The biggest fear that I have, and it speaks to the overcorrecting thing that Luke was talking about, is that after many years of talking to my parents and finding the root of, you know, particular traumas and trying to figure out why they did what they did, and realizing how much it affects me, you know, even just as on a daily basis, is realizing that like you can have the best intentions and still just royally mess up with your kid.
That's true.
That's the most terrifying thing for me, is that you do the best you can because you want the best for your kid, and then you do something and it's either by accident or even just like a slightly wrong way, or it's interpreted the wrong way, and your kid just like hates you forever. Like that is the single biggest fear that I have.
No.
And it is a realization that has made me realize that my parents are very human, and that, you know, even though I
Gives new
do
perspective, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
even though I do harbor those resentments towards the way that I was raised and how I grew up, they still wanted the best for me. And despite their best intentions, I feel the way that I feel. That doesn't invalidate the things that I feel or my experiences, but it does mean that you can still potentially f up really bad even if you try your best. And that realization has helped my relationship with them, but it also terrifies me to have a relationship of my own with my own child.
Yeah. No, that's
Because you're
reasonable.
aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. That makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Like every parent has there's like no handbook to
Yeah.
parenting,
Yeah.
right? And so every parent's going to do a different style and have different ways of thinking and stuff like that. But I think it's a completely natural feeling to be afraid of how your child's going to turn out because of your actions and your feelings, because you've experienced that.
Yeah.
It's completely natural.
Yeah.
Like you
funny.
learn from your experiences.
No, it's just funny how we're talking as if we're gonna have like a kid tomorrow.
We're entering our 30s, man. Like it's a topic of discussion, you know.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way: when someone says they're pregnant, now it's like, oh, is this a happy thing? You know, like it's not just an immediate like, hey, do you need a ride somewhere? You know, like it's like you need a double check to see if like it was a planned
true.
thing.
That
Or,
is
you know,
true. That is
like
true.
we're entering that age
goodness.
now, you know, which is like pretty crazy.
Indeed.
Yeah. No, I think good so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've caught a lot.
Indeed, yeah.
A few comments before we end. First, one tip each. How do you unlearn trauma?
Okay, someone else can go first.
I think for me, it's just understanding what your trauma actually is, and if you're willing
that's
to
important.
actually,
That's the first step.
if
Yeah.
you're willing to actually move on from that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the willingness to want to understand and move on from it is a big thing, because some people just want to like they've obviously experienced a trauma but don't want to think about it or talk about it. Yes. So yeah, I definitely think that's an important one to do. I think communicating how you're
I
feeling.
agree. Yeah. And like going out of your way to like research how to get better and like be willing to
Yes.
Yeah, that's an important step.
go to even
Therapy.
therapy.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
That's the word. Yeah, definitely.
My advice is to not be afraid of being vulnerable, especially if you're trying to unpack something, like man or woman, you know, it's important that you find a safe space, whether or not it's with your friends, your family, or, you know, a
external
therapist,
third
like,
party.
yeah, you know, external third party.
Yeah.
For you to explore these things and feel like you aren't being judged, or that you should be judging yourself, or even just like bringing words to these feelings. I think it's important to be open to that emotional rawness, and it's if you decide to do that, it's a thing that takes time. It will come in waves. It won't be linear. Like, you know,
Yes.
Yeah.
you'll think
Yes,
you'll fix the
100%.
thing, and then like the next day it's like, oh shit, it's still there, you know.
Yeah.
And like that's okay.
Yeah.
But
that's the process.
yeah, that's the process.
Yeah.
You look at the trend, you know, it's like from when you started, from when you are now. If you're better, then you're on a good path. But, you know, it will take some time, and it will take emotional investment, but
Yeah.
it will be worth it in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
perfect.
healing isn't easy.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
bro.
exactly.
100%.
It's ass.
I agree
It's
with
Many
that.
years, you guys. It's going to take
So,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
It's a journey.
But yeah, thank you guys for listening today on our traumatic talk
Yeah.
and our trauma bonding. Stay tuned for next time, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
I'm going to go cry now.